8th of March. On Friday the 5th of April, so the Friday that's just passed, the Post Office disclosed 189 documents following a review of Post Office's hard copy material, 200 documents following an additional precautionary mimecast review. A further 374 documents were disclosed, said to be the third tranche of documents, including, quote, further material identified as part of a second assurance review involving searches of email inboxes of personal assistants to Section 21(3) individuals. This was in addition to the 1,071 documents disclosed on the 28th of March and the 3,188 documents disclosed 2 days further. The Post Office said that it was now, quote, urgently reviewing data for personal assistance to the Section 21(3) individuals who are witnesses and are due to give evidence from the 23rd of April onwards. And they anticipated they would provide the documents to the inquiry on or before this Friday, the 12th of April. So taking the 5 reviews about which the inquiry was informed on the 2nd of April in turn, I understand the position to be as follows. The third-party advisor and personal assistant review has seen the disclosure of a total of 4,633 documents since the 28th of March alone. The Post Office has told us that that review is not yet complete. The NAS drive and file share saw the disclosure of 196 documents from the NAS drive last week, but the review is ongoing in relation to other witnesses. The supplementary precautionary mimecast review arising from the Phase 5-6 remediation review saw the disclosure of 200 documents, but that's now said to be complete. The hard copy documents review saw the disclosure of 189 documents last week. It's unclear if that review is complete or remains ongoing. The Patrick Bork 2017 mimecast data work appears to be ongoing. We understand the data is being collected and processed urgently. The volume and timing of such disclosure is unknown, but the Post Office said that they were working to disclose any further documents well in advance of Patrick Bork's hearing on the 7th of May. So we in the inquiry team wish to inform you and the core participants of these developments without delay. They present issues with which the inquiry has become extremely and unfortunately familiar with over the past 3 years. I should also put the developments in a wider context. Since the end of the Phase 4 hearings alone, so that's since the closing submissions on the 2nd of February 2024, the Post Office has disclosed 73,720 documents to the inquiry, of which the inquiry legal team have characterised 67,210 documents as possibly relating to Phases 5 and 6 of the inquiry. The inquiry has received documents from other providers during that time, albeit none as substantial in volume as the Post Office. And the inquiry's information management team have confirmed that as of late yesterday, at least 78,211 documents, including but not limited to the Post Office's documents, that likely or potentially relate to Phases 5 and 6 of the inquiry may fall for disclosure to core participants. The matters that the inquiry is investigating span 2 decades and a number of detailed issues. In order to proceed with hearings in a meaningful way, the inquiry has needed to prioritise its disclosure to core participants and will continue to do so. It's with this in mind that we in the inquiry team specifically set deadlines for the receipt of the late exchange material likely to be relevant to the Phase 5 and 6 hearings on a witness-by-witness and week-by-week basis in order to ensure that the hearings could go ahead as planned. This was communicated to the Post Office, and the inquiry understood that the Post Office considered that it had completed its Phase 5-6 exchange remediation exercises by the 22nd of March. The obligation of disclosure to the inquiry is, of course, ongoing. The inquiry had expected, and indeed anticipated, ongoing disclosure from providers of documents in certain instances. Documents can be found late, hard copies or electronic files, or messages may turn up in unexpected devices. But the issues that the Post Office's disclosure to this inquiry have presented have been much more than minor ad hoc or additional disclosure. In particular, the Post Office's assurance review, as it has called it, of personal assistant emails and other inboxes of potential relevance in response to the inquiry's Section 21(3) notice of last year is very concerning. As I say, that notice was sent in July of last year. It lists a number of senior key Post Office individuals. Such individuals would undoubtedly communicate via their personal assistants. The inboxes of what are called inboxes of potential relevance have not been explained by the Post Office, so we don't know to whom they relate. Even more concerning, the inquiry emphasised that the Post Office ought to apply a common sense approach to senior custodians as far back as a meeting with the Post Office in April 2023. So you asked for your team closely to monitor the Post Office's disclosure to the inquiry. We have done so and will continue to do so. Whilst these new developments are, to use a parliamentary word, unwelcome, your team is not unprepared. We're committed to doing all that we can to ensure that the hearings can go ahead as planned. And subject to your views, that's what we intend to do, to continue with the hearings. The alternative, further delay to allow the Post Office to get its disclosure house in order, is not one which is acceptable. It of course follows from that approach that there may be a need to recall some witnesses to ask them questions about documents which have not been processed in time for them to be asked questions about such documents in the coming weeks. So that's the approach that we intend to take, and that's all I say at the moment about this latest late Post Office disclosure.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Beer. The substance or a summary of what Mr. Beer has just explained publicly was provided to me late last week, together with Mr. Beer's and his team's advice that despite the problems which have occurred, we should carry on. I've had the weekend to think about that, and also whether it would be necessary to invite core participants to provide their views to me about that. And the decision I have reached is as follows. First of all, I don't wish to hear from the core participants, and secondly, we're going to carry on. Now that is perhaps a bold thing to do, because it does mean that there may be occasions in which witnesses are giving evidence where the documents haven't caught up with the witnesses, so to speak. And that is a highly undesirable state of affairs. But as Mr. Beer has explained, that can be cured, albeit with some cost to the witness, by recalling them if necessary. The alternative is to have a substantial break. And in my opinion, dare I say judgment, even though I'm not a judge anymore, that is not desirable. Make no mistake, everyone, I understand fully that the problems with disclosure are capable of creating very significant pressures for all the participants in the inquiry. But protracted adjournments so as to ensure that every relevant disclosable document is in the hands of all core participants prior to a witness giving evidence would also cause very damaging stresses to all the participants. And so I have to exercise judgment and come to a balanced decision. And as I've said, my view is that at the moment the problems are not such that we need to call a halt. And my intention is to continue with the evidence sessions in accordance with our published timetable, so far as is reasonably possible. I stress, as Mr. Beer has stressed, that the monitoring of disclosure, which I promised would continue throughout, will continue throughout. And if I deem it appropriate, I will certainly use one of our days off, a Monday or sometimes a Friday, to hold a disclosure hearing. So there's a threat to you all. I want to publicly acknowledge, and this is the last of the observations which I wish to make, that at least in part, I may be to blame for some of the problems relating to disclosure. There may be some in this room, in fact, there are some in this room, and certainly there are some in the inquiry team who consider that the timetables which I set for the hearing of evidence are unrealistically tight. On any view, the volume of material to be disclosed to the inquiry and then by the inquiry to core participants is enormous. I acknowledge that if the hearing phases had been spread out with greater breaks between them, as some have advocated, then some of the disclosure pressures would be eased. However, I am acutely conscious that this public inquiry has been in existence for very nearly 3 years. Although by the standards of some inquiries, that is a comparatively short period of time, I am unshakable in my belief that this inquiry should not last for a day longer than is strictly necessary. And if that means that the pace at which we proceed causes significant work pressures for us all, then I'm afraid that's a price we're all going to have to pay. So thank you for your words, Mr. Beer. And I think we're ready for some evidence.
Well, just before we do that, can I turn to a brighter note?
All right, a brighter note. Thank you.
As you know, sir, and it was publicly announced by the inquiry on the 9th of January this year, the inquiry jointly appointed Dame Sandra Dawson and Dr. Katie Stewart to the role of governance expert witnesses. Dame Sandra is Professor Emerita of Management Studies, University College, Cambridge, and a Fellow, formerly the Master of Sydney Sussex College, Cambridge. She acted as an expert member on organisation, governance and leadership on the expert advisory group on the Windrush Lessons Learned Review and regularly advises on leadership, governance and organisation structure. Dr. Stewart is a policy governance expert and was a visiting scholar at Sydney Sussex College, Cambridge. Dame Sandra and Dr. Stewart have been instructed to produce 2 reports addressing issues relating to leadership, management and governance. The first of those reports has been disclosed to core participants. It's dated the 27th of March 2024 and has the URN EXPG 606. It sets out the expected and best practice in relation to the standards of governance, management and leadership in companies such as the Post Office in the period 1999 to 2019. It's a substantial body of work, being 133 pages in length, including its appendices. A copy of that report, the first report, is to be treated as having read into the record today, and therefore a copy will be uploaded to the inquiry's website today. Dame Sandra and Dr. Stewart will be considering the evidence given in phases 5 and 6 of the inquiry, both the written evidence and the oral evidence, and will produce a second report in the light of that evidence when phases 5 and 6 have concluded.
Thank you, Mr. Beer. I think we can all agree that is a brighter note.
Can I call Alan Bates, please?
Yes, of course. Ah, he's appeared.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, repeat after me. I swear by Almighty God
I swear by Almighty God
that the evidence I shall give
that the evidence I shall give
shall be the truth,
shall be the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the
and
truth.
nothing but the truth.
Right, take a seat.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, Mr. Bates.
Good morning.
My name is Jason Beer, as you know, and I ask questions on behalf of the inquiry. Can you tell us your full name, please?
Alan Bates.
Thank you very much for previously providing a comprehensive and detailed witness statement to the inquiry and for coming to London today to give evidence to assist the inquiry in its work. Can we start by looking at your witness statement, please? Sure. It's the only hard copy document I'm going to be asking you to refer to. It's got, for the purposes of the transcript, the URN WITN 3050100, and it's up on the screen. It's 59 pages long, excluding the exhibits page, and is dated the 29th of February. I've picked up a couple of typos. I wonder whether we could just correct those first. If we look at page 23, and the foot of page 23 at paragraph 75, it says the CWU were not involved in this period, as I recall. The NFSP in the letter, should that say from Colin Baker?
Yes, it should.
Dated the 13th of January. So cross out the words January 200 and put in the words Baker, the word Baker. Yes?
Yes, please.
And page 32. Paragraph 102. It says in my letter to Mr. O'Neill dated the 9th of September 2009, I think that should be 2004.
The original letter. Yes, it would be. Yes, you're right.
Yes. So can that be corrected to 2004? Thank you. If you can turn to page 59, please, in the hard copy. Do we see your signature there?
Yes, you do.
And with those two typos corrected, are the contents of the statement true to the best of your knowledge and belief?
They are.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bates. I'm not going to ask you questions about every aspect of your witness statement because it's long and detailed, and a copy of it will be uploaded to the inquiry's website today so the public can read it. Can I start? The statement can come down, please. Can I start with a little bit about your background? You tell us in your witness statement, it's paragraph 5, no need to turn it up, that before you became a sub-postmaster, you worked for 12 years in the heritage and leisure project management sector. Is that right?
That's correct.
And is it right that in the course of that work, you developed experience in electronic point of sale, EPOS systems?
Yes, I did.
You developed experience in the development of site-specific business software and the provision of staff IT training.
That's correct.
To what extent, if any, did that background assist you when you became a sub-postmaster and were later required to work with the Horizon IT system?
I think when Horizon came in, I think I was quite positive about it because I knew what technology and these sorts of systems could do. So I was quite positive. But I found it a bit frustrating once the system was installed and we were operating. I found there were many shortcomings in the system. And knowing what these systems could do, it just seemed a bit of a lost opportunity.
You were a sub-postmaster, I think, between the 31st of March 1998 and the 5th of November 2003.
Yes.
By my reckoning, so a period of 5.5 years or so.
That's correct.
And by comparison, if you don't mind me saying, to other sub-postmasters, that's a relatively short period, isn't it?
It is. It is, but it's due to Post Office, not to myself.
Quite. And also, I suppose, ironically, you spent more than 4 times that period campaigning.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And why has that been necessary?
because, well, initially it was because Post Office terminated my contract, giving me 3 months' notice and not giving me a reason for doing so. Purely because, in my belief, is that I kept raising problems and concerns over its Horizon system due to a number of faults I'd found over the years.
You tell us in your statement that you spent that period of time seeking justice, accountability and redress for not just yourself and your wife, but also on behalf of a much wider group of people. Is that right?
Yes, I did. Once I'd started my individual little campaign in there, we found others along the way, and eventually we all joined up, and so the JFSA was born, and onwards went the campaign.
You say in your witness statement that you have dedicated this part of my life to this cause. Is that how it has seemed or felt? That
Well,
firstly, that it's required dedication, but secondly, it's a cause.
Yeah, I think it's also stubbornness as well. But as you got to meet people and realised it wasn't just yourself, and you saw the harm and injustice that had been descended upon them, it was something that you felt you had to deal with. Sorry. It's something you felt you had to deal with. It's something you couldn't put down. And you had the support of the rest of the group in there as well. Sorry.
That's right. Do take a moment to clear the frog in your throat.
Yeah, I have, haven't I? Hopefully not a Welsh one. There we go. Sorry.
Talking of which, you ran a post office in North Wales.
I did.
What was the name of the post office, and in which town was it?
It's Craigerdon Post Office in Llandudno.
Just say that again.
Craigerdon Post Office in Llandudno.
And what kind of post office?
Like me teasing him about those names.
I see. Okay.
What kind of post office was it?
It was it was a 3-position counter. In there, it was when we first bought the property. It was very much at the back of the property in there, and it was a bit run down. And it also had another side, a retail side to the business, which was a whole variety of things: crafts, knitting, haberdashery, a whole range of things. So for the first year or two, we just ran the business as it was and slowly developed it from there, putting on a big extension, updating a lot of the stock. But more importantly, we actually saw it as a big potential to grow the post office business, and we brought it right to the front of the building, and with a large queuing area for people. Unfortunately, it seems what post offices need. And so we invested quite heavily in developing the post office, and that was at the time Horizon came in.
Thank you. And I think you and your wife, Suzanne, were 44 years old when you took it over, is that right?
About that, yes, would have been.
You tell us in your witness statement that there's no need to turn it up, it's paragraphs 9 to 13, okay, in summary terms, about your decision to become a sub-postmaster, your decision to pick this post office, your hopes and aspirations, and the process by which you applied and by which your application was approved. I just want to look at an account you've given in the past in more detail about that,
sure,
if we may. Can we look, please, on the screen at poll 302-4194? This is a witness statement you made in the course of the group litigation proceedings in the High Court. We'll deal more about that later today. Is that right?
Yes, it is, yes.
And we can see the date on it in the top right, 9th of August 2018. And so this witness statement was made for the purposes of what came to be known as the Common Issues Trial, is that right?
That's correct.
And so the process by which you applied to become a sub-postmaster the documents that were, or in fact were not given to you, were important issues and addressed in this witness statement in very great detail. Is that right?
That is right, yeah.
Can we look, please, at page 3? And pick up at paragraph 11, please. You say a key attraction to working with the Post Office was that it would provide secure employment based upon the fact it provides a community service and has an established brand in the community. From among the various small business options available, a post office branch would, in my mind, be a safe option. I was also encouraged by the fact I could run a secondary business, such as a retail shop, alongside the post office branch. That sets out, in summary, your reasons for picking post office as a future enterprise with your wife. Is that right?
That's correct.
Now, paragraph 12 on this page, right through to paragraph 23 on page 5, addresses the initial inquiries you made with the existing or the outgoing sub-postmaster, Peter Savage, I think his name was.
That's correct.
And the planned visits that you made, and indeed some unannounced visits that you made to the post office in question as part of your due diligence. Is that right?
That's correct.
Can we just look at paragraph 21 on page 5, please? You say that you do remember that during one of my visits to the branch, Mr. Savage explained that he had a practice of keeping unders and overs in a tin in the safe as a system to deal with any odd shorts or overs. I remember this because I thought it to be rather casual and unusual for a business. Nevertheless, I was not particularly concerned and considered it to be a matter for Mr. Savage and his staff, and I didn't understand it to involve large figures or to be problematic. Is that right?
That is right, and it was very odd and very strange, I thought, for a cash-based system where you didn't actually record anywhere the amounts, and you didn't provide post office with returns of the position each week in there as well. But that seemed to be the way it operated.
But these were small sums of money, is that
They
right?
were small sums of money, yeah.
From paragraph 24, if we scroll down, please, right through to paragraph 33 at the bottom of page 7, you deal with the agreement to purchase the post office. Yes?
Yes.
And then if we go forward to page 8, please. From paragraph 34 on this page, right through to paragraph 86 on page 19, you deal with the following issues. I'm just going to summarise them without reading the text. Firstly, the application to the post office to be a sub-postmaster. Secondly, the interview at the regional office in Bangor that you and your wife attended. Thirdly, the confirmation that your application had been successful and the material that you were then given. Yes?
Yeah.
And if we just go forward to page 15, please. And look at paragraph 62. You say, at no stage during the process of my application, appointment and branch opening was I ever sent a copy of the sub-postmaster contract. I first obtained a copy of the sub-postmaster contract much later in circumstances I explained below. At no point during my appointment process was it mentioned or explained to me that the sub-postmaster contract, which was a lengthy document of 114 pages, governed the terms of my appointment. Now, we'll hear later that, is this right, that the Post Office robustly challenged you on that issue alongside other issues at the trial, and then the trial judge, then Mr. Justice Fraser, held that you were an honest witness, that you were telling the truth, and that, like many other sub-postmasters, you did not receive a copy of this document.
That's correct.
You address later in this section of your witness statement your initial classroom training, and then lastly, the transfer of the branch to you and the opening of it, correct?
Correct, yes.
Can we turn to the introduction of the Horizon system into your branch? And can we go to your inquiry witness statement, please? At page 5. Paragraph 14, you tell us that in October 2000, the Post Office introduced Horizon at my branch and imposed upon me a requirement that I use it to record transactions at the branch and to submit branch accounts. To the best of my recollection, Horizon was installed from the 2nd of October 2000. I remember the branch was closed around this time to allow for this. Horizon installed under 2 years after you took up the position of sub-postmaster of this office.
Correct.
And then scroll down to 15, please. You say, I didn't have any involvement in discussions about the introduction of Horizon. I had no choice but to accept and accommodate this variation. Obviously, this was also a huge change in how I operated the branch, as many of the previous processes that I'd been trained on and had operated at the branch were made obsolete, not only for me, but also for my assistants. Paragraph 16, please. You say, when Horizon was introduced, given my background with electronic point of sale systems, I regarded the introduction of Horizon at first as a positive innovation, and you've told us that in summary this morning. However, I did not expect there to be any apparent discrepancies shown on the system that I was unable to identify the cause of and resolve, either by myself or with support or information from Post Office Limited. Certainly, I did not expect discrepancies to occur for which the Post Office would try and hold me liable without the cause being investigated and established. To that point, I'd been preparing accounts manually using the capture system. Just going back to what you say on the previous page, you say in the third line, I didn't expect there to be any apparent discrepancies shown on the system that you were unable to identify the cause of and resolve. What do you mean by that?
Well, I expected to be able to track down any transaction that I'd undertaken, myself or my staff had undertaken at the branch. One way or another. There are a variety of ways of interrogating systems and the data on the systems, and I presumed that the system would enable you to do that at the outset. But, I mean, in previous roles, before Post Office, I'd use something like crystal reports on software packages to extract information using certain parameters in there. But there was very little flexibility in Horizon, as I saw it at that time, for reports that you could control the parameters of your searches for. There were a set of reports, don't get me wrong, there were a set that were already built into the system, but they were quite restrictive in there, and it did seem to cause problems.
And we see this as a feature in the correspondence that we're going to turn to a little later today, and a constant theme that you pursued, i.e. the visibility of transactions and the auditability of transactions from a sub-postmaster's perspective was lacking in the Horizon system. Is that correct?
Very much so, yeah.
Can we turn, please, back to your High Court statement, poll 302-4194. And turn to page 32, please. Can we pick it up at paragraph 144? You say that you've been referred to a part of the Post Office's defence and to its defence and counterclaim. And you say that you understand from this that the Post Office's case for the purposes of the common issues trial is, quote, that losses do not arise in the ordinary course of things without fault or error on the part of sub-postmasters and their assistants. And, this is what the Post Office said, it would not be right to infer or presume that a shortfall and loss was caused instead by a bug or error in Horizon. And, quote, that the truth of whether a shortfall did or did not result from losses for which the sub-postmaster was responsible, quote, lies peculiarly within the knowledge of sub-postmasters as the person with the responsibility for branch operation and the conduct of transactions in branches. You say, these things were in my own experience very far from the case. And then you set out from your own experience, by comparison, what you say by reference to what the Post Office suggests. Can we look at paragraph 145, please? You say, I didn't expect there to be any apparent shortfalls that you were unable to identify. That's essentially what you said in your inquiry witness statement. And then 146, you say, one of my fundamental concerns when Horizon was introduced, which you clearly communicated through various letters, was the lack of transparency and control available to me in reviewing transactions when trying to balance. You refer to a letter, and you say, I could not fully access data that I needed in order to properly track and, if necessary, to correct transactions. Your concerns came to a head in December 2000 following a particularly difficult balance. You were therefore dependent, you say, upon the Post Office for this sort of information, and therefore in order to ascertain the cause of any apparent shortfall and whether it was in fact a real loss. And then you say in 147, although Post Office later moved to monthly balancing, during your tenure you were required to produce weekly accounts, which meant you had to conduct a balance on a weekly basis on a Wednesday. When carrying out this balance on Wednesday the 13th of December 2000, the Horizon system showed there was an unexplained variance of over £6,000 relating to gyro deposits. That can come down, thank you. So the first substantial unexplained variance was over £6,000, is that right?
Yes, and it was only a number of weeks after the system had gone live.
Well, I was going to ask you that. System live about the 2nd of October.
Yeah.
We're now talking about the 13th of December, so 2 months or so after the system had been installed, this variance arose.
Yes.
If we go back to paragraph 148, please, of poll 3024194. So over the page, please. Thank you. You say, as you mentioned in a paragraph above, I contacted the helpline seeking support and help as to why this apparent variance had occurred. They were unable to assist in any meaningful way. I tried to investigate the matter myself. I printed various reports from 2 of my 3 counter terminals. I left the 3rd terminal for use to serve customers, who, as we were very busy in the branch, with customers queuing out of the door. You cross-refer back to paragraph 143.1. I'm not going to go there, but essentially you tell us in that paragraph that on that day, the 13th of December 2000, you contacted the helpline 7 times, is that right?
That's correct.
And one of the calls was about an hour in length.
Yeah.
And were they of any assistance at all in that in those 7 calls?
Not really. stating the bleeding obvious, I think, really is one description I might use. But it was all things that I'd tried.
Did they suggest anything?
No, and the other impression I got is they couldn't access the system any further than I could at that time.
And just by way of an aside, I think you tell us in your statement that post office records subsequently disclosed to you show that in the 2-year and 9-month period up until November 2003, i.e. when your contract was terminated, you and your assistants made 507 calls to the helpline.
Correct.
Of which 85 related to horizon and balancing problems.
Yes.
And that you found the helpline to be ineffective and indeed of no help.
Very much so, and often we never bothered ringing it.
Can we go on to paragraph 149 of your High Court witness statement here? You say, using the limited reports you were able to print, you ascertained that around £5,000 of the alleged shortfall related to gyro items that had become wrongly duplicated on Horizon. These reports were in the form of lengthy, multi-line, narrow till receipts and were many metres long, making them difficult to review in any event. At the time, I believe that a majority of the remaining alleged shortfall, being £1,182.81, was also attributable to gyro errors. However, I was unable to track these potentially smaller sums in the absence of proper reporting functions on Horizon. Therefore, far from being within my knowledge, I was unable to ascertain the root cause of the apparent shortfall at all. You had your thoughts, which you set out later. I also called my retail network manager, Jerry Hayes, the following day to inform him. In the absence of a proper response from the post office, I carried over the apparent shortfall from that week's cash account to the following week's cash account by transferring it to a suspense account, which was visible to the post office. So £5,000 of the £6,000 was attributable to wrongly duplicated gyros. The loss which had been left, about £1,100, you couldn't account for on the information available to you. And is it that sum, £1,100, that you ended up in dispute with the post office over?
At that time, yes, it was, yeah.
And I think the first thing you did was to write a detailed letter to the post office about it.
I did. Yeah.
Can we look at that, please? Poll 404598. At page 134, please. We can see this is dated the 19th of December 2000, so about 6 days after the balancing issue emerged, and again about 2 and a bit months after the installation of Horizon at your branch. And it must be noted, I think, very early in the life of the Horizon system taken as a whole. Would you agree?
Yes, I would.
You'll see that the heading of it is Horizon faults. Can we read the letter together? Because this sets out what might be an important account early in the life of Horizon. You refer back in the first paragraph to a conversation, and as is good practice, you confirmed it in detail in writing. You say the balance at this office on the 13th was not only very stressful but also very worrying. The evidence that appeared during that day proved beyond any doubt that the Horizon system cannot be relied upon to give 100% accurate figures. The problem which was highlighted to this office that day was with regard to gyro deposits, and at one point the weekly returns were showing a variance to the addition of the daily returns of over £6,000. The whole of that afternoon was spent making a number of phone calls to the different helplines, one of almost 1 hour long, and kept 2 of the 3 terminals producing nothing but reports at a peak trading time when we had queues out of the door, though eventually I did manage to track down the majority of the money. That said, the cash account for that week is still showing a shortage of 118281. I can without any doubt attribute 36850 of that to gyro items that have been double entered and that I'm unable to track because of the way Horizon is set up. Of the remaining 81431 shortage, I'm presuming that 40915 of that shortage is from the previous week that's become added to the total. This leaves a difference of 40516, which I'm unsure of where it comes from. It may well be a gyro system error, as might be the previous week's 40915 shortage, or it may be something else. Unfortunately, the current Horizon system does not let you access previous transactions adequately enough to track problems with shorts or overs at the end of the week. Continuing. Having spoken to the local branch secretary of the Federation of Sub-postmasters on these problems and realising the problems I'm experiencing are being found by others around the country, I really do not believe it would be unreasonable for Post Office Network to hold me liable for losses on the cash account until such time as 100% guarantee can be given about the accuracy of Horizon. I've been hoping to leave any comments in writing about Horizon until the office is quieter in January, and then write a detailed submission about the costs we've incurred with it, around £1,000, the problems with the counter, staff working with money and stamp books on chairs or on the shelf behind them, the very poor layout of the screen and menus, the slowness of the printers, the lack of report writing facilities, the chaotic end of day and end of week procedures, and the problems of having to do, quote, office work at a terminal on the counter. Given time, I shall produce the report for you. Please do not think that I'm being nothing but negative about the system. I'm a firm believer in the way forward through such a system. But bear in mind my comments are made by someone who's had considerable experience of electronic point-of-sale systems before joining the Post Office in 1998. I first began working with them in 1986 and have used a variety of systems. Reading on, so I do have some insight into those systems, and I would gladly be willing to offer constructive feedback if asked. With regard to the current deficit showing on our cash account for last week, how do you want me to progress this week's balance? Should I just roll it through and see what happens, or what? And then you ask for assistance. So in that letter, you make it clear on a number of occasions that Horizon is at fault, and you explain in detail why, so far as you could tell, that was so. Is that right?
That's correct.
You tell the Post Office that you're not alone and that this was happening around the country.
That's what I understood, yeah.
Did that information come from your local branch secretary at the NFSP?
It did.
Was that Dave Foster?
It was Dave Foster.
And you ask a question, what should I do at the end?
Yes.
Did you ever get a reply, a written reply,
No.
to the raft of the points?
Sorry, no, I never did.
No reply to this letter at all?
Never.
Can we move on, please, to page 140 in this bundle? This is a follow-up letter of the 7th of January 2002. So now over a year has passed. And you're writing to the Post Office about this long in the tooth alleged shortfall. And you say, as you're aware, the cash account for this office is still showing an amount of 104,186 in the suspense account. This cumulative figure was placed in the suspense account towards the end of 2000. And I have no doubt at all that it was due to errors in the Horizon system over a number of weeks at that time. In my letters to Jerry Hayes of the 19th of December, which we've just looked at, 16th of July 2001, I've skipped over that one because of time, neither of which did I receive a written reply to. I gave further details on this matter. I really do think that enough time has now passed for Post Office to have resolved this issue, and that unless I receive a written comment to the contrary by the end of this month, I'll take it the matter's closed. When I signed my contract with post office counters, I did not sign to accept the liabilities arising from the shortcomings of a less than adequate horizon system. All liabilities from such a system are clearly the responsibility of Post Office Limited or ICL Pathway. Allowing this issue to drag on not only continues the stress and strain of the original problems, but I fear also continually cast doubt over my honesty and that of my staff. Therefore, I greatly appreciated it if you would bring this matter to a head in order that we can move on. Can we turn to your inquiry witness statement, please? At paragraphs 39 and 40, which are on page 12. You say, finally, by letter of the 6th of March 2002, I was notified that, quote, Post Office has decided to take no further action in respect of the loss at my branch and that this will be written off. No reason was given, but I've since seen a copy of a, quote, write-off authority voucher disclosed by the Post Office, which gives the reason for the write-off as, quote, disputed Horizon cash account shortage. The letter of the 6th of March also said that the Post Office had taken time to respond because, quote, it has been necessary to formulate a consistent response to all such cases. I take it from this that the Post Office was aware at the time of many such complaints. I also take from the fact that the Post Office was willing to write off the considerable apparent discrepancy I disputed, that my complaints were valid, and that the Post Office was aware that was the case and wished to avoid the controversy on this matter, given that I was willing to assert my legal rights. Can we turn up, please, poll 404598 at page 143, please. We should just look back at page 142, please. This is the letter of the 6th of March 2002 that you were referring to in your witness statement.
Yes.
And if we look at the third paragraph, there's the passage that you cited after due consideration of the facts surrounding your loss in your report. Post Office has decided to take no further action in respect of the loss, which will be written off. And the write-off authority, if we just look at the second page that was included, if we just scroll down a little bit. Thank you. This is the unsigned version, essentially. I've received a write-off authority voucher to the value of the amount which has been cleared from my suspense account, and the voucher has been cleared in the appropriate manner in the cash account number, week number, I'm sorry. Was that amount, 104186, actually cleared out of your suspense account, so you went back to zero in balancing terms?
Yes, yes, I did.
So it didn't remain thereafter a shortfall which you were required to roll over?
No.
And then can we look at the loss authorization document, which you also referred to in your witness statement? That's poll 00328099. Page 3, please. I think this is the loss authorization document. If we just pan out so we can see all of it, please. I don't think this is something that you saw at the time, is that right? This is an internal Post Office document.
That's correct.
But you got disclosure of it later, is that right?
That's right.
And we'll see that it seems to be in standard form. It's got your branch name and your FAD code, the amount of money. And it says the following decision has been made with regard to the loss at the above office, which relates to an aged shortage, which the sub-postmaster insists was attributable to a Horizon system software equipment training failure. And then three options are given. The second of which was the sub-postmaster makes it good. The third of which, an amount of it must be made good, an amount of it will be written off. And the first of which was the full amount will be written off, and the sub-postmaster has been sent the appropriate voucher with which to clear the loss of the amount. Yes?
Yes.
Did you see this document, that the writing off of a loss because you said the loss was attributable to the Horizon system at the time of the dispute with the Post Office in 2002 and 2003, i.e. before termination of your contract?
No, I didn't see it.
And so were you aware at that time that the Post Office seemingly used the standard form with delete as appropriate boxes on it?
No, I didn't. But now that you mention it, I do recall a conversation that the retail network manager had at the time with this department at my office. So I only heard one side of the conversation, and it was about arranging for this write-off amount or a write-off voucher. And I seem to recall, and it's stuck in memory because of what it was. He said, "Oh, it's another one, the Horizon losses." And it's just one of those little things that, you know, sticks in the back of your mind that was said at the time when the retail manager was speaking to this department on the phone, arranging the voucher.
In any event, there existed a form in which a loss could be authorised to be written off on the grounds that the sub-postmaster said the loss was attributable to Horizon.
Yes, it did.
And that's what happened in your case.
Yes.
Thank you. That can come down. Now, before you had authorisation to write this loss off, you continued to roll it over from week to week.
Yes, I did.
And was that done with the knowledge and approval of your then retail line manager?
Well, they were aware of it. They certainly informed that that's what I was doing. So,
we've heard from some post office staff the evidence of Susan Harding springs to mind, particularly to me. That the post office believed that the suspense account was used by sub-postmasters to cover up theft and fraud. Your evidence is that you were being transparent from an early stage in the life of Horizon in your complaints about Horizon discrepancies, about the use of the suspense account to hold over disputed sums whilst continuing to assert that the money wasn't owed and ought not to be made good. Is that right?
that's correct.
Did there come a time when that practice was challenged?
Not during my tenure. I understand it was later on.
I think after this write-off, there continued to be some shortfalls shown on Horizon. Is that right?
That's right, yes. Well, it's not just, sorry, you say shortages. It was also overs and unders. It was
So surpluses as well.
surpluses, yeah.
And did you seek to discover the cause of both the surpluses and the shortages?
Yes, as much as we could.
And did you encounter success?
On occasion, yes.
Did it remain the case, however, that a sum just over £1,000 was carried as a shortage in the suspense account?
No, not to my recollection. There was a claim at the very end of my contract that I think they said that the office was owing something in the region of £1,200 or £1,400. But
Is that I'm referring to?
Sorry?
It's that I was referring to.
Yeah, no, but that wasn't carried out as such. What happened was that I refused to, when we undertook our weekly balance, you were then meant to put in money to make up to the figure or take money out if it was over in there. I refused to do that. I rolled through the shortages or the losses in there. Shortages or the overs each time. So it had a running total. It was adjusted from week to week because I really did not know where the office was up to. You know, I had no idea. So, and often some of these where there had been an error might come back in a week or 2 weeks or something of that sort of time, or it could be a lot longer. When the actual error was discovered elsewhere and it can be corrected. But no, I never actually reset or zeroed the system, but I just kept rolling through the shortages and losses. And Post Office were aware of what I was doing.
Did the installation of a new retail line manager, Mike Wakely, cause matters to be brought to a head in that respect?
Eventually, yes.
And can we look at that eventually? Poll 404598, page 144, please. This is a letter to you dated the 14th of April 2003, reference losses and gains. Just want to read the first part of the first paragraph. Further to our conversation, you confirm that you've been rolling over losses and gains for the past 2 years or more. That's what you've just described.
Yes.
He says, I was unaware of this practice. And then in the second paragraph, he says, I'm now instructing you that with immediate effect, you're required to make good the outstanding loss and to cease with this current practice of rolling over any losses and gains. Can we see your reply, please? Page 145. You say, I'm in receipt of your letter, the 14th of April, that's the one we've just read, confirming our conversation regarding losses and gains at our office, which have always been rolled over since the installation of Horizon. I appreciate you may well have been unaware of this practice at the office, but can assure you that many others at Post Office, many other Post Office staff knew of it. My comments regarding this are all well documented in a number of letters, such as that dated the 19th of December, which, like all letters, was sent recorded delivery. The problem with rolling over the losses and gains is that I presume I'd be accepting liability for them, which is something that I've pointed out in writing to you since the introduction of Horizon here. I'm unable to do until such time as I'm able to access the data that I'm being asked to be responsible for. As I've written previously, the totally inadequate report system has been made so complex it lacks the ability to interrogate the system when you know the information is inside. If I'm unable to access the data to check items, it's totally unreasonable to expect me to accept liability from uncheckable data. I think that reply speaks for itself. But did this exchange of correspondence, the new-ish, I think, retail line manager raising the issue, requiring you to make good the shortfall, to cease the practice, ultimately lead to your contract being terminated?
I believe so, yes.
Can we look, please, at page 147 of this bundle? Letter from Mr. Wakely, 2nd of May, scroll down. Thank you for your letter of the 16th of April. That's the one we've just looked at, the contents of which have been noted. Nevertheless, I must point out that you are bound by the terms and conditions of your contract for services, which was acknowledged by you on the 31st of March 2003, and somebody's written in not correctly, I think 1998. That was you, was it?
Yes.
1998, exclamation mark, accepting your appointment. To this effect, you're charged with ensuring that all accounts entrusted to you are kept in the form prescribed by Post Office using the approved accounting system. and therefore, in the event of any losses occurring, these should be made good without delay. Accordingly, failure to comply with these obligations can be construed as a breach of contract, which could ultimately put your contract for services at risk. Over the page, I therefore request that you acknowledge the content of the letter within 10 days of its posting, confirming that the accounts are being maintained in the correct fashion, and make good the losses as per your contractual obligations. And then 149, please. Your reply to that letter. With regard to your letter of the 2nd of May, the first paragraph, I think you pick him up on the typo. You refer me to section 12 of the contract, and rather than what he has suggested to you, you're liable to repay all losses, you point out that section 12 in fact states the sub-postmaster is responsible for all losses caused through his own negligence, carelessness or error, and also for losses of all kinds caused by his assistants. Deficiencies due to such losses must be made good without delay. You rightly point out that I've agreed these terms. I confirm I gladly make good any losses caused in these manner. But I can see nothing in this clause which states that I'm also liable for data I'm unable to check. And that's a summary of the position that you had been maintaining, I think, consistently since installation.
Yes.
To take an extreme, if the Horizon system said I owed £1 million, would you say I'd have to make good the loss without delay and without question? There's no way I will agree to be held responsible for data I have input until such time as I'm able to access the data that I'm being asked to be responsible for. In trying to state that I've acknowledged such things as terms and conditions of my contract, you're in effect purporting to vary this contract. We can skip over the next paragraphs, which are about something else, and then go to the next page, 150, and then the letter ends. So you correct the Post Office on the terms and conditions. You make it clear the point that many have missed, that the contract does not oblige you to repay all losses. And then you make a point of emphasis, the £1 million example in your third paragraph. Was there any effort by the Post Office to engage with the points that you were making in this letter?
None at all, never addressed them.
Can we turn, please, to poll 404598, page 30. That's the same bundle, page 30. Scroll down, please. Mr. Wakely, in accordance with your contract, I'm writing to issue you with 3 months' notice of termination of your contract. The termination will take effect on the 5th of November 2003. So this is the letter that brought your contract to an end, is that right?
That is correct, yes.
The letter, of course, speaks for itself. It gave you no explanation for the reason for termination of your contract.
That's correct, yeah.
But was any such explanation given to you by the Post Office at this time?
Never.
It may seem an insensitive question, but how did receiving this notice make you feel?
Well, I was annoyed with them, but to put it mildly, but I think it was partly expected in a way, because it was pretty obvious they were determined to, they were after me one way or another, and the build-up of correspondence over the period was certainly pointing in that direction. But I always find it quite interesting that I pulled them up on the point about trying to terminate my contract under clause 12 of the contract, but they didn't do it that way. They decided to go just under this, any reason they wanted, 3 months' notice without giving a reason.
So it's a without fault, without reason
That's right. Yeah,
termination, just on 3 months written notice.
yeah, that's it.
But you'd had the £1,100 written off. You'd had the Post Office acknowledging that it was because of a genuine dispute over whether Horizon was to blame for it, over the operation of Horizon. You'd been rolling over other shortfalls and surpluses since then with Post Office knowledge, and then this arrives.
Well, it was it was a bit strange in a way because we were a very busy post office. In fact, it was a time when a lot of post offices were losing trade, but our sales figures were extremely high in the region. We developed a lot of new business in there. But, you know, it was their decision to do it, and so be it. I mean, I did offer at one point, when there were discussions between the retail manager and myself, when we were heading in this direction. He was saying, come on, Alan, you know, change your mind, do this, do that, and all the rest of it. And I'm saying, look, if you're unhappy with the way that I'm providing your service, then pay us back our initial investment and take the post office away. I would have been quite happy for them to do that. And I probably wouldn't have been here today on that basis there. But, I mean, they just decided they were going to, I felt, they were going to make a lesson of my case, because a number of other people knew what was going on at that time. And I think it was something the Post Office liked to try and give lessons of how they were in charge.
Can we just look before the morning break at some reasoning that the Post Office gave subsequently for terminating your contract? To start with, can we look at poll 00107538? And page 11, please. This is a letter written to an MP, Betty Williams, in relation to a letter that she wrote as a constituency MP to Alan Layton, the then chairman of the Post Office. And it's the 29th of October. If we just go to the second page, scroll down, we can see who it's written by. Dave Barrett, Head of Commercial Urban Area for Wales, the Marches and Merseyside. Back to page 1. And look at the second paragraph. Briefly, we've given notice to Mr. Bates, the present sub-postmaster, that we're withdrawing from our contract with him. And then this is because we've lost confidence in his willingness to conduct the job in the manner expected. Was that ever explained to you, that they had lost confidence in your willingness to conduct the job in the manner expected? Can we look, please, at poll 303-1815? This is a presentation on Horizon integrity prepared by Dave Smith. It's undated, and it seeks to tell a story about the integrity of Horizon. We may find in due course an interesting account overall, but I just want to look at what it says about you on page 6. And scroll down, please. Mr. Smith says, of the cases I'm aware, Bates had discrepancies, was dismissed because he became unmanageable. Was that ever explained to you, that you became unmanageable?
No, not at all.
And then Mr. Smith says of you that you, quote, clearly struggled with accounting and despite copious support, did not follow instructions. Firstly, did you struggle with accounting?
No, not at all.
Were you given copious support?
No.
Did you seek to follow the instructions that you had been given by the post office?
Basically try and bankrupt myself. No, I didn't, not to that extent.
If these, that can come down, thank you. If these after the fact reasons or justifications for the termination of your contract are not, on your understanding, correct, what do you understand to be the reason for the termination of your contract?
Well, I mean, basically, I think it was because, A, they didn't like me standing up to them in the first instance. B, they were finding it awkward. And C, I don't think they could answer these questions. And I think they had a feeling I was going to carry on in a similar vein going forward.
Just lastly then, can we look at poll 302-4194? This is your witness statement. Can we look at paragraph 170? I'm afraid I haven't written which page that is. Try about 25. Hopeless. Try about 30. Try about 35. And then if you can scroll forward to paragraph 170, please. You say this is your High Court statement for the GLO Common Issues trial. I've little doubt that the reason for my termination is that I had not only uncovered limitations and potential errors with the Horizon system, but that I continued to question the Post Office on the contractual relationship between sub-postmasters and the Post Office. Was that your belief at the time?
Yeah, it is. It's a good summary of how I felt.
Does it remain your belief now?
Oh, yes.
Mr. Bates, thank you. Can we take the morning break, please? There's a slight glitch with the transcription service, which I think means we need to take 20 minutes rather than our usual 15.
All right, so what time shall we resume?
I think that means 5 to.
5 to 12. All right, see you all then.